I'm Scott Weatherly. Welcome to 20th Century Geek. This week's episode, I'm going to be starting unscripted, off the cuff, mainly because I wanted to do a sort of a genuine introduction to this show. We're in the middle of or can be coming to the end of our British invasion month, and I sort of wanted to take that from the academic to the comic fans, really. So, to give a story, when I was first introduced to comics as a kid, I found them in the newsagents. It was the Complete Judge Dredd, 2000 AD, and the Judge Dredd magazine really were my in for comics. And then really it was also a couple of the Marvel UK titles at the time. They sort of did collections, and they still do them actually, like Marvel Universe, Marvel Legends, Wolverine and Deadpool, those sorts of things. It was later on that as I grew older, I was able to go into town and everything, living in Coventry, that I found Forbidden Planet. And so Forbidden Planet is on the Burges in Coventry. Great shop, give it a visit. But that was my go-to. So sort of like, you're talking like mid to late 90s. I went in there and it was like Aladdin's cave, of comics and just like comic-related heaven. And it was there that I came across things like Image comics, like Spawn, more DC and Marvel stuff. And I learned so much just by looking at that. But the thing with Forbidden Planet was it was very much a chain. It is a chain, and I'm sure the staff at all these are very, 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 very nice, very, very lovely. But it's still a chain store. And it never felt like that welcome. It never felt like a local comic shop, which I think is a term that's sort of used a lot these days. I eventually moved away from Coventry, and so sort of going to Forbidden Planet was no longer a reasonable commute to go pick up my comics. I think my wife would have been too impressed. So I turned to the internet, online. There was a site called disposableheroes.co.uk, and it was very, very good for a long time. Actually, it was really, really good. Consistent solicits were always up to date. You had your sort of like your list, so I could sort of like just get the same thing over and over again. It was really, really good actually. I really enjoyed that. Straight to my door, each one, but bagged and boarded. It was really good. I highly recommended them at the time. Unfortunately, for whatever purposes, they went bankrupt and disappeared, which a real shame, to be honest. So I was sort of left again. For a while, I sort of turned to a number of different things. I tried the online solution that Forbidden Planet offered. There was a couple of others, A Place in Space, Silver Acres, a couple of others I tried online, and they were fine. It was great. I used Forbidden Planet for quite a while. Their sort of like delivery system, it was all right. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't getting the experience I wanted. So, living in the sticks, in the middle of the National Forest, I googled, basically, good old Google, asking where's my local comic shop, expecting it really to be one of the surrounding cities, Leicester, Nottingham, Coventry, Birmingham, wherever, and just thinking, is that an option? It turns out there is a comic shop in Burton-upon-Trent, which is very, very close to me. So I thought, I'll give it a go, and I shall set up my pull list. And I did. And these guys are a real local comic shop. They really are. They get to know you. They get to know their clientele, their customer base. And they all talk to you about everything. These guys are knowledgeable. They know their stuff. And they make an effort to read and understand what's coming out, what's available, what's coming up. So if you ask questions, they know their shit. Fantastic shop. And it's a mixed shop. They sell comics and all the paraphernalia and also milkshakes. And regardless of their feelings about those milkshakes, which I'm sure they'll cover, I'm a fan. My daughter's a massive fan. So yeah, I've got to say, Super Shakes in Burton-on-Trent, fantastic local comic book shop. I've really enjoyed it. Becoming a comic buying customer of theirs. What's the point of all this? Well, as I say, this month we've covered off the British invasion. We've been talking about Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman. And last episode we went through the academic approach. It was really good fun, actually. I really enjoyed the interview with Greg Carpenter. But I wanted to take it back to the fans. So who better than two true blue comic book fans than the guys that run Super Shakes? So I asked them, and they happily accommodated me. I went in and we discussed comics. We talked about Diamond. I didn't realise there was so much about Diamond, actually. I learned about how they set up their shop, how they work with Diamond, and then we got onto the three leaders of the British invasion, really. So I'm now going to hand you over to me, and I'm going to let the guys introduce themselves. Enjoy. Okay, so I'm here in Super Shakes with its two owners. So if you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about yourselves.
Okay, my name is Matt, and I am one of the owners of Super Shakes. I am dead into me comics, and I'm a slave driven by milkshakes.
Slave to milkshake.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. You never think that your overlords.
Yeah. The price you pay to be in the business you want to be, I suppose.
I'm Jordan. I'm the other one of the other co-owners. I also enjoy comics. The milkshake side was partially my fault as well, so apologies.
Yes.
I just enjoy general bizarre media in many of its shapes and forms. So
Brilliant. So how did Super Shakes come about?
It's kind of the seed kind of came from in the film Kick-Ass. There is a milkshake and comic book shop in it. I think that was kind of like the first inkling of like an idea that we had, but the real kind of where the plant grew was when we were watching Comic Book Men.
yeah,
And none of us liked our jobs.
Yeah.
Like, this job looks amazing. Like, I wish we could do that every day. And I think it's kind of good that when you watch stuff like that, you don't realise that there's also loads of work that goes with it.
Yeah.
But it still is kind of half like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like, you do forget, but it is.
It's better than what you were doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then so it kind of all just came from there.
yeah. We were just sitting watching a lot of episodes, just generally hanging out, and then the thought comes like, maybe we could do this. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's possible.
Yeah.
Like, and you never really. Sometimes when you come up with like spur of the moment thoughts, that's where it ends, and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
Sort of
Yeah.
thing. But with this, we just sort of like kept the idea going. Like, oh, maybe we can do that. Like, let's see how long and how much effort it takes to actually get there, and then.
I think the only point I realised we weren't joking was like the day we opened.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, whoa,
Yeah.
this is happening. We can do this. Like,
I've got a pick
sorry.
customer.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Sorry, guys, I was joking.
It's
when I
gone
said-
too far.
Yeah.
It's gone
Yeah,
too
It's
far.
too hard. I'm off.
Yeah, that's it. So
It was like it took us like a year. We had the idea in January, and
Yeah.
then by the December we were open.
What year did you open?
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
So it's still like. Because they say most businesses fail in the first year. So you've done it. You've
Well,
broken
that's
through
it.
the
We've
barrier.
got
Yeah.
past the first hurdle, I
Yeah.
suppose, like the biggest hurdle. So it is a good start somehow.
You got
I'm still kind of like
Yeah.
in that feeling where you're like, well, we can do this.
It is quite inspirational. to be
Yeah,
fair. I mean,
thanks, man.
because I'm very much in the corporate drudgery. To
Yeah.
be perfectly honest, my days are filled with like email and being shouted at for not delivering stuff.
Yeah.
So to have broken away from that and done it's something I've had lots of 2 a.m. ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then by 3 a.m. they're usually, like you said, they're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or my wife's told me, no, we can't afford a pig.
Yeah.
So you're a bit like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, I think that it's tough starting, and you're so quick to put yourself down on these things. I think the best thing when you're coming up with your 2 a.m. ideas, write them down, and then even the next day you might be like, that was stupid, or you might be like, oh yeah, that could be good, and then stick with it, because like after doing this, you kind of realise anyone can. If there's something like the hardest bit is doing it. Like there's loads of hard work involved, but as soon as you get past that first hurdle of like, can I do it? Like, you can definitely do it.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like going out there and
actually doing it.
Yeah. It is. It's easy. It's both harder and easier than you think it is to do in a weird way.
Yeah.
So anyone can do it, but just not in Burton.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
No,
like follow your dreams, not ours.
Follow the comic book dream somewhere else.
Somewhere else and without milkshakes.
Yeah.
No, because I've been. There's this place. There's a shop in Shrewsbury, which does like coffee. It's got a coffee sort of side.
Yeah. There's a few of them.
And I've been to one in Glasgow, but that's about it.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's one of those that when you go to it, you sort of go, why has that never been thought
of before?
before?
It's weird. It's because it's like, it's a struggle to own a comic book shop, just flat out, because there's you can't return them. That's the biggest thing. Like, you cannot return your books, so everything is a gamble. Everything you buy, everything you put on the shelves.
So that's like the relationship with Diamond, because that's one of the things I've never understood, like the background of the machinations of how Diamond and everything works. I've never understood it.
It's a strange thing. Like, you have to order everything 2 months in advance. But they don't start advertising things till maybe a month to a couple of weeks. So like we've just got a big pack of like leaflets to give out for the Darth Maul book. But I ordered that months ago. So it's like, well, I've only got like so many for the shelf. I don't want to give 50 leaflets out and only have one on the shelf. It's just daft. So it's, if they gave you stuff, I mean, if you had to order that, ideally, if you ordered later, then you'd be a lot safer. But because they're the only company that does it, it's a lot of it's geared towards kind of
the bigger places.
Forbidden Planet. Specifically online.
And I imagine for people, I don't know, but I imagine it's a lot easier for bigger shops.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of the same with everything. That's not just...
It's hard being the little man.
Yeah.
But it's a constant balancing act, trying to get it right, not having too much or like ordering too little, because obviously we cater to like most of our customers are like dedicated. You know, we see the same 80% of our customer base all the time, every week, sort of thing, in and out. So we're trying to make sure that they get what they want and make sure that we've got everything right for them. And so, you know, we're trying to balance and stay on that tightrope of making sure we've got it.
It's so easy to get it wrong. Like just when books don't come in, and obviously like you've got to go, when you do your order, you've got to go through a list of like 30,000 books or something, and it's so easy to just miss one off, and then you just like, someone hasn't got their book, and then you go to order it and it's out of stock, and what you do then, you just have to like either outsource it or
I suppose ordering for like the big two is probably like easier, but if someone comes in and is like, right, I want, you know, Archie and Veronica number 4, you're a bit like,
you just have to be like, no. And that's that. And you can kind of see why, like a lot of comic book shop owners, you know, you get like, you know, your Simpsons comic book guy, where they are really like arsey with you, and it can make you that way, because there's nothing like, you know, someone will come in and like, have you got this? And you're like, of course not. And then you kind of hate yourself for doing it. Like, oh no, sorry, no, we can't. It's like, because obviously they don't know. But in your head, you're like, oh, I've had to deal with this, that, and the other. It's so easy to get wrong.
I suppose it's anything. I'm one of those. I am quite myself, being like, I'm quite into the comic industry. I look at the solicits when they come out.
And that's the bit. Like, if someone's on it, then you don't have to be for them. Like, that's the hardest bit. Like, some people just like expect you to be able to get stuff in like in a flash, which is fair enough, because anywhere else you probably would be able to do that. And like with the volumes and stuff, that's easy. But it's the issues of really, because they only make limited amounts as well. So that's obviously why they're valuable, and collectors and stuff. And it is.
Wow, we say that. I'm never falling for that again.
No, don't fall for it. Like, it's only really. A lot of them are hindsight worth a lot, because they've introduced this character or something that they didn't know was going to be this popular, and then it turned out they were.
My brother-in-law, not a big comics fan, but he loves horror and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he had Walking Dead #1.
Oh, really? So
clearly read it and was like, that's alright.
Yeah. Oh man, so like stuff like, because you're not to know, are you?
No, if it takes off as like a massive hit.
Yeah.
That's it. It's kind of like us ordering comics, essentially. We don't know until they slip in here and out already.
Yeah, and then it is a nightmare, and you feel terrible, like, because I do the ordering, and so when you've not got someone's book, and it's just like, well, I've just ruined everything, basically. Everything we do, I've ruined it. And it's like, what can you do about that? Like, you can only do what you can do. Like,
that's it. Yeah. But that's the same in everything. Like, you can only do what within your power.
Exactly. And I think we're very lucky in that a lot of people just kind of let you off for it, and they're like, no worries. And
I think
we've got a good lot of subscribers and stuff.
And that's it, like I say, because I've got my pull list and sort of do that. And if there is things, if I sort of say to I've sort of said to you guys, I'll pick it up from issue like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to look at your stacks, or I'm going to go, I'll pick it up on eBay, knowing that's probably the best way to do it. So it's just common sense. And
that's it. I think it's like you say, it's a tightrope act. It's just constantly like a balance of chance. It's a roll of the dice. Like.
I think the location as well is sort of like, it's two heads, because like obviously it's a small town, so you've only got like a certain type, you're only going to have like a certain demographic, like, and we've got certain readers that pick very particular things, and then but like if we were in a city, we'd probably have like a much bigger audience obviously for the mass stuff, but then like the smaller bits and pieces, like the intricacies of knowing your customers and knowing the same few people, we wouldn't have that. And so like it's sort of
it's funny because like when I went to like a diamond retailer event recently, so you meet loads of different people from different shops, and obviously a lot of them are in like cities or bigger places, and our kind of market is entirely different to most of them as well, because a lot of it's young people and college kids and stuff that are just getting into it, and they read like the opposite stuff. So you're kind of we're in a position where we're the market that comics are currently trying to reach. But no one else seems to have that market. Like, and it's weird because it's like you're like ground zero. You're like we're like guinea pigs that the publishers don't even know we exist.
Yeah, you could be a great test bed for things.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So it's weird. Like it's. Like, but as well, because we're in England, like, it's also a completely different thing where, like, because the news doesn't really spread as far. Like, they get loads of just marketing stuff, like, whereas we won't get that.
Well, it's funny to say, because all my life I've used Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
And I mean that's where I started. I lived in Coventry, and although it was like it had comics, even then they were in the back room.
Yeah.
And then before you got there, it was toys. It's collectibles, it's your statues, it's your board games, that sort of thing. So even then, you're like, although it's Forbidden Planet, I consider to be a comic shop. That was clearly their secondary market, really.
More people are interested in superheroes and the kind of the genre than they are
the
actual books. Like that's what. Like more people are kind of come in and. They're more happy that there's a superhero themed place than there are that it's a comic book shop. They're like, oh yeah, I love all this. I love all the Marvels,
the
and
Funko bobbleheads and everything else.
Like we've had like a handful of occasions where people have come in and said, "Do you sell comics?" Like even though there's a wall of comics, like because they're just the general public, they're the milkshake crowd. Like they just come in, they have milkshake. Like that's all foreign to them. Like there's a wall over there that's just blur. It's like it's like white noise to them.
It's out of their periphery.
They'd know, they'd know the Batman logo and they'd know who Superman is, but that's about as far as it goes.
Someone asked me if they had words in once. Like there's a genuine question. Like. You just kind of don't know how to answer. Yeah. They're like, oh right.
They're not like a silent film.
Yeah, like
I can read.
And it's just like, especially when like, I mean, if you've ever been in, or on the counter, we've got comic books all over it, so they can see the pages.
Yeah.
When they're asking me, like,
well, even on the walls.
Yeah.
It's not. It's bizarre. People's interpretation of what a comic book is.
No idea.
Is really bizarre.
it's getting better. I think.
Yeah.
Like.
I think with the movie industry sort of has highlighted things.
Yeah.
Although that's partly responsible for the
I think
the mindset.
It's weird, isn't it? 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, the movies are making the comics more popular, but probably ruining them at the same time.
Yeah.
You know? And
it's definitely. It was about the films. Like, I like to be excited about the films, but generally I'm a bit like, I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But the film industry and the way the comics are sort of leaning towards them a little bit, has really put me off. Like
because it ruins,
especially Marvel. Like I've stopped reading Marvel pretty much.
Well, they change everything to match with the films and stuff. Well, like when I went to this retailer event and Dan DiDio was there, and he gave a speech and he said because he was like, our competitors aren't each other, like talking about Marvel, Boom, like whatever. But not each other. Our competitors are the films. Like we have to make sure that we're doing like either better, but probably not, or as well as the films, because that's what kind of. And you can see what he means in that, because the better the films do, the more people that own like Warner Brothers will come in and be like, no, you got to do it like this because we want the films to do better and stuff. And there's always someone like they've got to answer to and stuff. So
it's pretty crazy that's the hierarchy going.
Yeah, and that's where it's going. What's with the money, isn't it? It's the money driver.
And that is it. Money is like the.
Which is why I think. I think there's going to be more of a thing for creator-owned comics, more and more in the future, because that's where the creativity is going to be. In fact, let's jump the subject. Then. Going back creativity and sort of almost the death knell of mainstream comics. The point we're talking about is the British invasion of sort of like the mid to late 80s, early 90s, driven by Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, and Neil Gaiman in particular. And we're talking here about sort of like comics going towards the film industry and becoming, I'd say, a bit bland.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few Bronze Age comics, sort of 70s and stuff.
Yeah.
But at that period, comics were pretty naff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have really gone back and read any of the volumes or even the issues.
They're hard to read as well, aren't they? They're like,
they really are.
Like, just, you got to really chew on them. Like, they're really tough. And then it kind of, as these guys came about, you can see the change like immediately, just because it starts becoming like they're still probably as wordy, but they're interesting as well. Which is like, rather than them just saying, "I will swirl my hammer over my head," clockwise motion, it's like they're actually giving worthwhile words where you're reading it and it's like, this is actually adding to what I'm seeing. And it becomes more like, I mean, that's the. If it's just telling you what you can see, what's the point? And that was kind of where they first started.
I've always been baffled by them. The caption at the top, and sort of like you're saying sort of and Superman did this and this. You're like, but that's in the panel. I'm alright. I can do that. I can.
Yeah, that's.
And it's weird because, like back then as well, they draw it first, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And then write it. So you're like, why are you writing that? Like, is it just because you want to write? You need something to write.
Did they get paid by the word?
Yeah, that's
I think
what
they did.
They probably did.
Genuinely did.
Page rate versus word rate.
We're
just competing for space.
That's it.
But it is funny. You can pick up an old comic and probably not read most of it. And you'll get that. You'll get the same story. Like, just read the odd speech bubble, and then if they start monologuing, then just quickly carry on.
Just skip. Oh, brilliant.
Sometimes the best way to read the older stuff. But it is, some of them are hard going, aren't they?
From the art as well, like you can tell an old comic from simply like colour.
Do you
know what I mean? Like just there's maybe 3 colours on the page at a time. Like it's blocks.
The palettes changed, didn't they?
It's completely different to what we see now.
One of the things is, I mean, I'm a massive Moon Knight fan. I love Moon Knight. So I went back and I've collected like every issue, like the proper floppies. So when you go back and you do read sort of like some of the 90s stuff or the early 2000s, it's really good. And then you get to the 70s and like the printing is awful. Like you've got the head, the header in the thing, and the printing's off. It's like some weird 3D image.
Well, it's like, because I mean the paper was different, wasn't it?
Bad paper stock.
And it, like, even now, if you get a really old story, they still print it on the old paper, don't they, in the book? Like my Watchmen that I got, like the last 5 pages were like that, and I'm like, really, I had to really read those last pages, because obviously, like, I bought it when I was a bit younger, and it was like I'd saved up for it. I was like, I've spent ages reading it because it was a slow read. And I'm like, I got to the last few pages, and it's like revealing what's going on, and I can't read it, and I'm like twisting my head around trying to like decode it, and so I still kind of don't really know what they
The
said.
end.
I mean, I get the gist of it, but it's weird.
It is one of those. So what was your exposure? What was your first sort of introduction to that sort of? Obviously, you guys are a bit younger than me. I'm only in my mid-30s, but so even I didn't get into comics until the 90s. So what was your exposure? What was your first introduction then to these three?
Probably it was probably Watchmen. It was the first one I read. I think maybe some Batman stuff.
Yeah. I think I don't know. Maybe I might say like Arkham Asylum was like fucking the first.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna say straight away, like I'm more of a futurist. So like old stuff like that, like it really like it has to be really unique for me to like go back and like
try it out.
Like dredge through like something that's like a bit old timey. It's very of the times, like so that if something is like a bit different, it has to be like really timeless for me to be like, right, I'm on board with this. So I think I sort of like probably came along a bit later and saw what the guys are doing, like I mean like Alan Moore, Watchmen stuff, and I think I had a bit of Watchmen at school. I think we had one copy in the school library.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this Watchmen, I keep hearing good stuff about it. Like,
your school library was much better than yours. Seriously.
I think the comic section had like 5 comics, and the other 4 were always out.
Like
so.
I don't think we had a comic section. I was just sort of like, his maths, his science.
Yeah.
Don't read it.
I remember I saw him in the library and I'm like thinking, oh, I wish like that would be well cool if you got to read comics at school.
Yeah.
But like I think Watchmen, the more I think about it, I read that when I was quite not young, but like early on in my kind of when I was getting through reading. I think because it was Alan Moore and he was like the first one I was introduced to. Really. So I read that and I read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I think at around the same time. And then that's kind of what got me into like I think the last one I kind of got into was Grant Morrison. He's probably my favourite now. But that was probably through the Batman stuff, and then maybe it would have been through his more recent run on Batman. And then I was like, I'm gonna start reading all this other stuff, and
working your way backwards.
I'm still going through it. Like he's got loads on it. So because with his stuff as well, I always pick it up and I read it, and then I realise there's loads of parts beforehand. So I end up like I read all of his Batman ones in the reverse order because I was like, oh, this one comes before, oh, this one comes, and I read it from end to start.
To be fair, knowing how Grant Morrison writes probably made more sense.
It was like it was like but it was I mean, there's no problem with doing it like that. But like I've just read The Filth.
Oh, I love that book.
And that was
don't know what it's about. Couldn't explain it. Love it.
That's it. But it's like I read that maybe a year ago, and then you kind of realise, like I read somewhere that's part of he's got like a spiritual trilogy, and like The Invisibles is the first part of it or something, and I was like, oh, I've not read that, so I need to go back. Like, which is, but it's because there's so many of them. You're like, oh well, I need to kind of get, and obviously I try and read as much as I can here, just so that I can tell people
how good it is.
And it's kind of that's another bit where you're like, oh man, there's so much I want to read, but I've got to keep up with what's out now. Current. So it makes you angry when it's not brilliant. You're like, why are you not giving me something that's worth like not reading like V for Vendetta for or something like that? Like, but that's one I've still not got round to. V for Vendetta, and which is one. It's like top of my pile, but
I read
this stuff kind of gets in your way.
It comes down to you about the art. There's two. I mean, Alan Moore as well. Again, I think I was introduced through Watchmen and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, really. And then, but with Alan Moore, the art was almost what put me off.
Really?
Like looking at V for Vendetta, David Lloyd, and then From Hell. I'm like, am I going to slog through this? Like, am I going to look at this?
And because they look like when you flick through them as well, there's loads. He's wordy, isn't he? And you're like, oh man, this looks like too much. And I think that's probably because it's not in colour as well. V for Vendetta, you're like, you look through it, you're like, I'll read it next. I'll have something light, and then I'll read.
Get the cut because there is a colorised version. It makes the art work.
It's funny, isn't it? Like how much it can change. Like, I mean, some books are in black and white, and you forget once you start reading. Like Mouse, like which is like my favourite book probably ever. But you like when you remember it, you just don't think about whether it was in colour. I think, but that's more the subject. Because it's all true and stuff. Like, Yeah, you kind of like when in your head you're like, oh, V for Vendetta, yeah, and then you flip through and you're like, oh yeah, I'll read it eventually.
Yeah,
like
it's worth it. I read
as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I read it over the summer, and it is deep. Like it is. It's one of those that you've got to spend. Like,
I've not even like begun to dance with From Hell. Like,
no,
the when you just look at it on you.
I know you guys have got a copy, and I have to admit, it's one of those I don't own it, and I do keep every time I come in, I'm like,
I think it's probably the most like looked at and maybe buy copy of anything we've got. You're like,
it's one of those. I will at some point. I want to get and read so much.
Yeah, I mean, I bet it's good. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think we did From Hell in school as
did
well.
You?
Yeah, again at
really?
school. But, well, I don't think.
Who was your teacher?
Yeah,
like,
well,
where was your school?
Alan Moore was your teacher.
Some big beardy dude.
Some weirdo. But I think Alan Moore is probably the one I read the most. And probably the one I've read the least of is Neil Gaiman as well. Yeah. I've read like maybe the first volume of Sandman. Yeah. And again, because there's loads of it, I'm like, I'll get back to that. That was good. And then you just kind of like, there's so much of it that I'll have to sit down and plough through it at some point. Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to ruin it as well, do you?
No.
So
no. Just like I bought earlier in the year, I bought the Doom Patrol omnibus.
Oh yeah.
Treat myself. I was like, right, saved up for it. I got the money. Got it. Turns up. It's like a fucking block. So like every time I pick it up, like even I was sat on the sofa like this is a couple months ago and I got it, and my missus was like, how are you gonna actually read that?
It's like,
physically, how can you read
if
that?
you put it like, because I've got Bone. Yeah. I've got like the full works of that. So I'll read it sometimes in bed, and you put it on your chest, and sometimes it's like, you feel like you've got like Thor's hammer on your chest or something.
Literally suffocating.
I can't, because you can't lie on your side with it because it's too big.
Well, the fear for me is because I do sometimes read in bed, and there is that thing of when you're reading, you sort of like whack, and you're just like,
especially
Doom Patrol hit me in the face, probably break my neck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
split your lip or something like that.
So you've never done the Sandman.
No, I've done the first volume.
Yeah.
Like,
it's one of those.
I think the same with Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I think I've done the same. I've done the first volume.
Yeah, first volume,
really
and then
like
I'll read more of that, and then you just kind of onto the next thing, and like, I think that's partially why I've probably read more of Grant Morrison's stuff, because he does loads of like just single volume, like graphic novels, doesn't he, and stuff. So it's easier to get through more of his stuff because it's just like, I'll read this volume. Like, there's only 2 volumes of Sea Guy, so I'll read that. And then you're like, that's so weird. I want to read Nameless next, and then
weirdly, I think that makes him more accessible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not penetrable, because I think his work is sometimes.
It takes getting used to, doesn't it? Because I think the first Grant Morrison thing I read, and it was kind of like before I didn't really know much about him, and I read Final Crisis. And I still don't really get that. Like, I've been meaning to go back to it because I just remember reading it like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's all over.
Yeah, because that was like during like, it was like I say, it's the first thing of his I read, and I was just like, I finished it, and I remember being like, I don't get it. And then reading more of the Batman stuff, and then getting through it, and I was like, I'm starting to get him now because none of it. And then you hear interviews with him when he talks about stuff, and then you really kind of like. I get it now.
Yeah,
I get it. I'm not supposed to get it.
Yeah.
And then and you read stuff like, it always takes more than one read, doesn't it? Basically, like All Star Superman, I think was like the first one that I read, and was like, this is actually amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
that's one of my favourite Morrison works. I love that so much. So that's something I go back to like yearly. Like
it's so good.
Yeah. There's so many good bits in it, and it's like the best Superman story as well.
Yeah.
I've never read anything Superman that's been like as good as that.
I think it's weird as well because that, like, when I think about it, it's quite bright. Like compared to some of his other stuff, can go really dark, like like a cult level weirdness.
Yeah.
Like, whereas that's like, it's fairly. I mean, maybe because it's sort of like Superman, and like, he sort of keeps him on top of it. I mean, it does have moments where it drops a bit.
Yeah, he's good at handling themes though, isn't he? Like, it's like when you read Multiversity. And every issue is like a completely different theme. Like, you've got like Nazi Superman stuff, and that one's really dark and like horrible, and then the next one's Captain Carrot. And you're just like, this is the best thing ever. Or like the Shazam stuff as well, which is that's one of my I love Shazam anyway. And so when he did that was wicked.
I also with Grant Morrison, and reading that is really sort of like almost, and I'm going to ask the author Greg Carpenter about this on Saturday. I feel when you look at like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman, they sort of start on the superhero stuff. Like, Alan Moore started on Swamp Thing, and he did Killing Joke. He apparently hates Killing Joke, which I don't get.
Yeah, to be fair, like, I never got it. I remember reading it and being like, I don't know why everyone loves this.
Yeah.
And
it's the art I love.
Yeah, the art's really good, cause especially for the time. Like, it's like, it's easy now to look back and just be like, it just looks like other stuff. But then, if you compare it to like, if you compare that to Swamp Thing, you can just. I mean, Swamp Thing's not bad, but it looks like an 80s comic.
It really does.
Yeah. But this doesn't. Like. But I think when I read it, I was just like, I remember at the end, you know, when he like laughs with him, and be like, after all that, as if he'd laugh with him. And then like, it was when I heard Grant Morrison saying, "Oh yeah, basically what happens at the end is that is the Killing Joke."
Yeah, that's him snapping his neck.
Yeah, and then it's like. Then I was like, "Oh man, I've been stupid."
I
this
get
is a
it
really good story now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, no, but I don't even know if Alan Moore meant that.
I don't know if he
care,
did.
But
But as soon as he said
it,
that, it became like
Yeah.
an amazing story to me. Like I was like, oh wow, yeah.
I feel like Alan Moore regrets a lot of stuff though, because like I've read, he did like a short thing that was like Alan Moore's writing for comics, and like you read through that, and he's talking about how. And I mean, if you read Swamp Thing and stuff, you can see a lot of the stuff he explains where he's talking about it's important to do transitions between this and that, and so sometimes he'll have like imagery that moves from one page to the next and different scenes, or just a word that holds on. So it's like, oh no, wait, and then next thing it's wait, someone calling someone from a car or whatever, and then he talks about like all the things that did seem like really prevalent in his older stuff, and then at the very end of it, there's a bit from like a recent bit. Where he's sort of gone over it and doing a review of it, and he basically says like he just recants everything he's just said before, like forget all that rubbish, like we don't do that anymore. That was just kind of the times, and that's just what we did. And I tried to do sort of what I thought was best at that moment, and now we do it like this, and it's a bit more free and it's a bit more loose. And so I think sort of like as times have gone on, he's sort of adapted to sort of how it's worked. And,
but you read his stuff now. And it's weird, isn't it? Like I'm not a big fan of current Alan Moore stuff. But I respect it, and like he's still like amazing. Like, like those three definitely changed the way all comic. Like they wouldn't. I don't even think the films would be as popular if it weren't for like the stuff they did. I suppose like there's people like Frank Miller and that as well, but that was around the same time, wasn't it? And like.
Well, that's it. Well, I think really when you say, saying look at them now.
Yeah.
I was saying like those two in particular, Gaiman and Moore, they moved away from the super. They really they seem to regret it. I mean, Gaiman went off and did Sandman and basically was like, woohoo! I can do what I want with it. Yeah. Wild. But he's moved towards novels and he's a great writer. I love his stuff. And his books are fantastic. Alan Moore. Like you say, it seems to have just dropped off a cliff.
He hates it, doesn't he? Like with a passion.
Yeah, like he's gone off onto the end. But like you say, I don't know if you've read like Neonomicon.
Yeah. That was intense. That's been really intense.
I've been reading it and been like, I'm not sure how I should feel. I feel dirty. I feel a bit strange.
Yeah, it's very like
So
it's like his later League of Extraordinary Gentlemen stuff. Like it just seems every volume seems to go like. Further into, like you just like I don't know why I feel like this anymore.
Well, the last volume is awful. I'll put it. Century's crap.
Yeah,
the first two I like, but then that's
volume one, like volume 1 was amazing. Volume 2 was good, and then it kind of started dipping. Have you read his stuff with Nemo?
No, I haven't.
That's good. It starts getting a bit like
he's
more stable.
He's back on form.
But that stuff was weird.
Yeah,
I mean.
It's almost like he's just he wants to play. I always feel like he seems to struggle to me between trying to create something that has artistic merit versus basically him entertaining himself.
I think like as he's got older, I think he probably just it is that like that balance probably. I mean, you would. He's written so many stuff.
He's just done a book though, hasn't he? Hasn't he done like a massive, like beast of a book?
It's one of those like I've seen it in they've got a copy in Waterstones. And I have looked at it and I'm like, that'd be quite fascinating. I'm fascinated to read it. But it's over 1,000 pages. I'm not sure I can tolerate over 1,000 pages.
I mean, that's why we've not got it. Because I was just like, I don't think it'll sell.
I remember picking it up and putting it back down again. Like just the weight of it.
To be fair, if you pick 2 up, that's it.
That's it.
Build up.
It's
I mean,
one for
I've actually
ages.
got a copy of his previous book, The Voice of the Fire,
Oh yeah.
which is an early book he wrote in the 90s, which is a
Yeah.
lot shorter, and it's like 300 pages. And I've got a copy of that. And I was like, it was when I was going on my Alan, I was going on my sort of like intellectual Alan Moore kick.
Yeah.
And I was
Like,
going to do
go
all
through
that
it
stuff.
all,
Yeah. And I started reading it, and the first chapter is from the perspective of a mentally challenged caveman.
Which
Four
that's
pages,
typical,
four,
isn't it? Like,
4 pages in, I think I'll give this a go some other time.
Yeah.
that's it.
It's
yeah.
on my to-do list.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you need to spend time with it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I haven't got the time at the moment.
But yeah, I guess what you were going to say was that Grant Morrison hasn't.
No, that's it. Grant Morrison's
He
like,
loves
he's got-
it, like,
he loves
yeah.
it, and I
Yeah.
think you said about like Final Crisis.
Yeah.
One of the things I say, he's got his own themes in there, and one of them being like when you start going backwards.
Yeah.
So I've read Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Yeah.
and Infinite Crisis,
Yeah.
and then you read Final Crisis.
Yeah.
You'll be like, right,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
well. What I started to figure out, because I was always like, as I was reading it, I was like, I don't get this. Like, I've read it all now. Where did this come from? And then I read like interviews with him and stuff, and it's like, right, okay. What he does is he takes stuff that no one knows about from like
yeah,
the oldest stuff ever, and then just references it as if everyone gets it,
yeah,
and then like you just kind of like, I don't get what have I missed here, and it's like what you've missed is like 75 years of
Yeah.
comics.
Yeah.
Like that's
yeah.
why.
That's what you don't realise.
And that's what, and then as soon as you realise that, it becomes amazing. You're just like, oh, and then you look it up and you're like, oh,
you
that's
need
crazy.
wiki.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found you're like, I should read this, but with wiki, ready
Yeah.
to go. Yeah, because there's a thing in there that he has like that's in Final Crisis. Superman goes to the place of forgotten characters,
Yeah.
and there's some characters in there, and I was like, they can't be real. And you
Yeah.
look up and you go, no, they were.
They
are,
They were like
yeah.
legit characters
Yeah.
that DC owns and just done nothing with.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, that's a really interesting idea. But then you find he did it in Animal Man as well.
Yeah.
Like, but then and the same characters that are in Final Crisis
Yeah.
appeared in his Animal Man thing as well
Yeah.
in that same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're still like, yep, we're still here,
Yeah.
still forgotten,
Yeah.
still doing nothing with
It's
us.
crazy, isn't it? Like,
So yeah, where those two, the other two, have like moved away from it. It's like he sort of like just waded into all that sort of
Yeah.
like mythology and all
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
continuity and gone. Isn't that what that's what his Batman thing is, isn't it? Like his Batman run was like,
Oh, yeah,
let's
like-
imagine if everything was true.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And
he's
this is what
kind of trying to
happens.
find a way of like patching it all together,
Yeah,
and yeah. So that's why it's so.
nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't know what's going on here, and then you look it up and you're like, oh right, okay, so that makes sense now.
Yeah.
And then once you start to get the hang of that, and you kind of accept the things you don't get,
Yeah,
and then it becomes like, that's when you become like one of the people that loves Grant Morrison, that no
Yeah.
one else understands why
yeah,
you love it so much, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
His
'cause
work is just very cryptic and
Yeah.
very
yeah,
like.
it's puzzle solving, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
it is.
is.
Because I always feel like I love reading something that makes me feel stupid, because I like, it's often I feel like, you read something, you can figure out the ending quite easily or stuff like that. So when it's something that really, like, it takes months and months until someone tells you, like until he tells you in an interview what it meant,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh
yeah.
oh yeah, I
And
missed
then,
that.
then you'll go back and you go,
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's genius.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that I love stuff I don't get. Like,
Yeah.
that's
because it keeps you thinking.
Yeah.
But in 2016, this is the thing I like about about Grant Morrison. He's released 2 series. He's probably more, but he's released 2 series like that was ongoing, or
Yeah.
at least 6 issues in 2016.
yeah.
Klaus,
Yeah.
which is basically an origin story, year 1 for Santa Claus.
Yeah.
But he's pretty much like they say. There's
Yeah.
nothing cryptic in it. Like
No,
got
it's
some great.
fairly straightforward. I was
Yeah.
surprised at how
Straightforward
until
it was.
I suppose at the very end it kind of does a bit of a Grant Morrison ending.
Yeah,
But overall you just
It's
like you
pretty
can
linear.
accept it. Yeah.
but then he released Nameless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was one of the most confusing books
Yeah.
of his I think I've ever read.
Yeah, it's
Like-
on that sort of filth level where
Yeah.
you've got to go back. And I remember getting it issue by issue, and I was like, I'm sure I'll get this next issue.
Yeah.
And then I got the last issue, and
Yeah.
I was like, I think I'm going to have to go back and read this
Yeah,
to
I
get it
kind
all.
of because that was one I wished I'd not read issue by issue and
Yeah.
all at once, because I remember because obviously you have to wait a month, and when
Well,
you're
it wasn't
confused
a month,
anyway.
because obviously with this writing,
Yeah.
it took about, I think it
Yeah.
was about 10 or 8 months for the whole 6
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
to come out.
And then I just, because it kind of started off in a completely different place. It ended as
Yeah.
well, and you were
Yeah.
just like, there's bits that you forget, and then you like, it's tough, isn't it? But, really, it was a good series.
I enjoyed that. I read that back to back, luckily.
So
that's the way to read
more
it.
Condensed. I think you need to do that with a lot of Morrison stuff, don't you? Because
he writes stuff for certain ways, doesn't he? Like I know, like Multiversity, no problem reading that month to month, because it was kind of each story was its own story that added up. The same, I suppose, with All-Star Superman. Like each story is its own, but with like a kind of little thin line running through it.
I think that's a lot. He does that a lot with a lot of his stuff. Though it's in some of his better work. So even with the Batman run, even like each volume can be read as a volume. But when you read it as a whole, like the whole makes it a much better, experience. Really,
I think as well. Like I remember because I read 52.
Sort of never. I do want to read that,
and like because he's like part of that as well. But once you read that, loads of stuff in Final Crisis is from it. Like, and you're like, oh, that's where that came from. Like, I remember reading through it and there's loads of bits where I was just like, I don't get it. And then I read that and it was like, oh yeah, I remember this in Final Crisis actually. Like, and that was years later that I read it. So
it's one of those weird things in the book, in this sort of British Invasion book. One of the things they harp on about a little bit through the 80s into the 90s is the thing of sort of like standard superhero storytelling. There's a problem, there's a villain, there's a fight, the hero wins, and it is pretty standard. And these guys changed it, and then some of them moved away. But I think, like you say, with Morrison, there's still that standard element. But he's really, and I don't know if you think other writers have done similar, but he's the one that's taken the superhero genre and actually gone, no, there is more to it. Here's how you really do it. Mixed continuity and then a universe this big. Of course, that's it.
He's definitely like. He's the only one I can think of that's worked with full universe stuff. Like, I mean, the only other person that really does that now is probably Jeff Johns. Like, and he's quite good how he does it, because it's very simple when he does it, but it also isn't. But that's the only other time I can think about. Like, and I think a lot of DC stuff is built off those two, and like that's almost the problem. That they come across is that people can't keep up with that. So I know like a lot of they've done this Rebirth thing, and a lot of that, like I know Jeff Johns had to go to every single writer and like give them like a workshop thing, like, and apparently it was grueling. Like,
because he's gone back to the old universe.
Like so.
But I think Morrison, like maybe because he grew up with comics, didn't he? Like that was they were his sort of little saving grace, and so I think, like you're saying before, like he's got so much like prior knowledge to all of it. Like he has like the ability that a lot of people don't, where they've got a lot of the history to it, and he can add that to the modern and the new bizarre stuff that he's adding, and play around with it in a way that other people just don't. They haven't got like the groundwork.
Well, it's like he's got a passion for it as well, and like when I was at this retail event, like I was lucky enough to speak to Dan DiDio about like this stuff, and he was saying like loads of writers now they have to be careful because a lot of them just do comics so that they can get screenplays out of it. So they're just using it as a platform. So they rarely have writers that actually just want to be comic writers.
That's the difference from Morrison. He loves comics.
He could easily do a screenplay if he wanted. Like,
I've
no doubt. Like,
I bet you, and I'm sure he's done one or two. He's probably got set in a drawer somewhere, and people have read it and gone, "I ain't filming that."
So he just he could if he really because he's got the back. Like, he's got the backing to do it really. Like just on his CV. So you know that someone like that is. Even like Alan Moore, and like I think he did a film thing recently, but he's someone that still does comics. Like even though he doesn't need to now, he could really do.
Yeah.
He could quit if he wanted to.
I mean, he could live
so he, like as much as he hates superheroes, he can't hate the medium.
No.
Like,
well, the weird thing for Alan Moore is the thing I find a little disjointed. He goes on about hating superheroes or sort of like it's a dead medium and all sorts of stuff. And he obviously has got issues, I think, with his own work in that medium or that genre. bet he doesn't turn away the royalty checks.
Yeah.
That come in from Watchmen or Killing Joke, especially recently, Killing Joke being turned into an animated film.
Yeah.
You may not want his name on it.
Yeah,
but I bet he's paid off part of his mortgage with it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
He's not.
I guess like he is one of the biggest names.
Yeah.
But will he? Do you think he still will be? Say in 50 years.
Yeah, I think mainly just because of Watchmen.
Yeah.
Because Watchmen's always like, it's the groundbreaker in it. It's always on the list of
turning point,
of the best books, and it always will be because it was like the first one. It's kind of like, like Disney and cartoons and stuff. He's the first good I suppose except for maybe like Stan Lee, the first name that kind of for a writer in comics that really
like stepping outside of the zone, like you're saying, like general, like normal, like comic book ways, like that's always just like, as far as good books go, that's up there. Like
it's a milestone in history.
It really is. Yeah, and I think that's where these three kind of break away from that, because it's like it's not just a lot of the time it's not just a comic book. Like it's like it's such a good story in itself. Like the writing's so more complex than, like you say, in just issue to issue, like like 23 pages of like solving a problem and then it being finished and wrapped up. You know? A lot of the time it can be like cartoonish in a way where it's like it's so formulaic, whereas with these guys it's a lot, there's so much deeper and like so much richer, and
technically they're great. And when like you say, the one you were saying before about his writing on comics, when he talks about doing those transitions, I think I don't know if it's issue 4 or 5 in Watchmen that starts and ends. And as if you were to look at it, it joins in the middle.
Yeah.
So the two halves mirror each other.
Yeah.
And I think, to actually plot, write, and come up with that, that's like deep. That's technically like
he
really
said he
genius.
wrote in like elliptical sort of like sequences, so that like it could loop round and stuff like that, which is like you don't get that. You don't get that.
I think it's like it's like the first people that took it really seriously and like came in and were like, these aren't like it probably wouldn't even be the question where it's like, these are just comics. It's just like, these are stories that we've got to tell. And really that's kind of the change, because they were a joke, weren't they, really, comics before that. Even like the ones that are fondly remembered are still like, at the time it wasn't cool, like it was never.
No, it's not.
And then they came in and then it started like, that's where it all started, isn't it? That was like,
it can be something different. It can be something.
They're the foundation for like for them now.
Yeah,
like really.
So I think really the difference when you look at me is, and I haven't read all of Watchmen, all of Sandman after that. So I know that I've like you guys read the first volume.
I know. It's
quite intimidating. Yeah. But it's that thing of like, it can be adult, it can be quite mature and that sort of thing. But I still think that's, like you say, with Grant Morrison, and going back to him again though, he's proven that it can be mature and it can be different and experimental, but it's never not fun.
Yeah.
So I think that there's that element of like, I haven't read From Hell, but having flicked through it and having done other bits and read other pieces of Alan Moore, it's sort of like, no, this has got to be serious.
Yeah.
And I want it to be taken as art.
I don't think I've ever read an Alan Moore book that's felt fun.
Yeah. Like, even Watchmen, there are parts of it you go, this, when it gets to the end of the issue and you've got all the Night Owl, backstory.
Yeah, like Under the Hood. And
and that sort of thing. After like issue 7 or 8, I'm like, well, I've got to read it.
Yeah, that's it. Like,
but it is dark, isn't it? It's dark and it's grimy, and like, I think that's another way in which like it steps out, because people expect it to be all rounded off and like nice happy ending, like, and so when it turns out to just be a horrible bleakness, it's like, whoa, I wasn't really expecting that. Like turning the page thinking there's more, but that's it. Like,
it does make I don't know much about his childhood, but it makes you wonder, like, how much were you smacked as a kid? Just something really dark happened to you.
Like he was just left in a basement for a long time.
Just fed through a letterbox. Have you read any other Alan Moore? There's one I've read recently because Marvel reprinted the issues. It's Marvel Man.
Oh yeah, no, because have they all done that? They've all done stints on it, haven't they? Gaiman and as well.
Weirdly, there's two series that all three of them have. There's only two that all three of them ever worked on, and one of them was Marvel Man. Because Moore did the majority, then Gaiman picked it up, and Morrison did an annual. The other one's Spawn, which is weird.
Has Morrison done Spawn as well?
He did one issue of Spawn, In fact, it was like Alan Moore did more. He did, I think he did
because
like 4 or 5 issues.
I've read because I had like the first time I got into Spawn, I had a game, and I remember being like, there was this one character that was just really good in the game, just like an arena game. It was crap looking back, but at the time it was amazing. But I used to play this character all the time, and then I was like, I'm going to get the book with him in. I want to read that one, and it was an Alan Moore one. And then you find out the character's a paedophile.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never want to play that character. It just ruined.
More.
So it is, isn't it?
And it's just like 15-year-old me was absolutely good.
Yeah.
I will admit though, Spawn is one of my guilty pleasures. I've got the big hardback editions, and
I think
I'm just one of those. Every now and then you read it, and you go, I know it's shit. I really
it just
enjoy
looks so cool.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
The thing, I think that's a lot of that era, like the 90s characters. They just looked cool.
Well, that was it. I think sort of like you had these guys.
And
these guys were doing the sort of like the literary side of things.
Yeah.
And then you get like Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
And
It's
they
like
were the
when
artists.
Image first started.
Yeah, that's Image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was sort of like all about the art.
Yeah.
And never the two shall meet. And it was that sort of thing. But I find that with Alan Moore, you're right, he is dark, but Marvel Man is really interesting and really worth the read, actually.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Because it sort of takes that whole thing of what would superheroes be like in real life.
Yeah.
And it's basically, it would be what would happen if Dr. Manhattan stuck around.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
But that's really what it is.
Oh,
It's,
right.
like, it's sort of like, what if Superman or Dr. Manhattan was real and they stuck around and they lived in London? And there are two things. I'll spoil it because
it's old enough to
it's old enough, and also it's more than that. You can read it.
Yeah.
But basically, by the end of it, like there's a villain comes out, and when they do the big battle, and this is really interesting actually. When they do the big battle, it's in London, and London is decimated.
Yeah.
Like it's two superheroes, and even like Marvel Man, who's the hero, admits like, no, I was trying to stop the villain because he would have destroyed the Earth. I killed people doing what I did.
Yeah.
And that's just a byproduct of what happens. And you're a bit like, wow, like with that man, that's dark.
Yeah.
To weirdly, Zack Snyder referenced it when talking about Man of Steel.
Yeah.
And then
Really?
he was like, no, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're a bit like, when I heard that, and I haven't read Marvel Man, I was a bit like, I can get it. Still not a great film, but I get it. Superman shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Alan Moore should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of it,
you can tell it like Zack Snyder because he's a self-professed like comic.
Oh yeah. There's
like,
so many
fan.
things.
But you can tell like his favourite stuff is like that stuff, the dark stuff, because I mean, he did 300 as well, and like all that kind of grittier.
I can imagine him having like I say, Miracle Man and 300 and Dark Knight and all that stuff on his shelf.
Yeah,
sort of like, that's stuff. And
I imagine like the Superman Man of Steel book they did. That was probably like one of his like. Yeah. Because that's when they made Superman a bit darker, didn't they? Like I remember Bizarro's in it, and he's just some shady character that doesn't talk, and it's all a bit weird. Like, but it was really good at the time, but
well, that was the very 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think like you say, when you look back at their work, there's some really, really good stuff that each of these have done.
Yeah.
And it's sort of some of it stands the test of time. Like I say, Watchmen will always stand the test of time.
Yeah,
I think From Hell will stand the test of time.
Yeah.
But they're not infallible. I think they've done some naff stuff. I wish Neil Gaiman would do more though.
Yeah, that's because I suppose he does loads of books,
that's the thing. Like, you can tell he's a writer. He gets the words down, doesn't he? Like, he's got.
I know, but he's like I suppose he's the one that could write like the happier stuff as well.
Yeah,
he's like probably he's not. It's understandable. All of his work is like pretty straightforward. And, but clever in a simple way.
Yeah. Which is, there's more themes. He's definitely the most literary of them all.
Yeah.
I read there's like a Hellraiser like collection of like little shorts that were done on like Clive Barker's Hellraiser type thing, and there's a Neil Gaiman one that's literally like it's about entering hell through words, and it's like about a guy on a train who does like a word search or whatever, and how like words spiral out of control and just sentences and phrases become like just anarchic and disgusting, and it's really clever. Like it's really weird, but it feels so Neil Gaiman. Like you know that's just come from a writer sitting down, literally putting pen to paper and being like, oh, how does this enter the darkness?
How can I get into that world? How do I get into that world? But that's why they're so good. They can enter any world, any universe, and then they can pull one out.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. Like, I'd love to see Alan Moore do something like that. Is actually be given something again and go, what would you do with this again? Because I think that's where he was so good. When he does his own stuff, it's great sometimes. other times not so much. But I'd love
Yeah.
to see him go back and do, I don't know, like say, give him something like Hellraiser, or give him
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
really weird and obscure, and see
Yeah.
what he would do with it.
Or give him something really bright and watch him turn it into something really horrible.
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
interesting. Like,
Here's Howard the Duck.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Make that really dark.
But I mean, I suppose that's what he did at the start, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
that is exactly what he did with, like... Because, I mean, like, even Batman, like, was super bright, and it was, like, him and Frank Miller that changed that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another name we shouldn't forget. Like Frank Miller
Yeah,
at that
because
time.
it's like, it's just because he's
yeah.
not
Dark Knight
British that
Returns
he's not included
yeah.
really in it. Like, but he is like, he's another one that's kind of gone a bit weird as he's got older. Like, but probably more so because he's like really racist and
Yeah.
like weird now.
Like, really
like,
right
Not
wing.
good weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's
not,
hard
crazy,
to-
not crazy uncle weird.
Yeah.
He's sort of,
and his art's good. Like, he's definitely got his own style now. Like,
yeah.
weird, but like, but he's written some of the best like, and some of the most game-changing books as well.
Yeah.
Like his Batman stuff
He's
and
brilliant.
his Daredevil stuff as well.
I
It's
love his
like-
Daredevil.
Yeah,
stuff.
like,
It's brilliant.
I mean,
Born
he
Again's amazing.
like that's when Daredevil really became like a big character, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And then after that, they have to get good writers on it all the time, otherwise.
He's a top flight character now.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the fact that the Netflix show
Yeah,
used pretty much like
Yeah,
part
like,
of
yeah,
the
heavily.
the Frank
they
Miller
still
work.
are as well. Like
Yeah.
the second season and
Yeah, the whole
probably
Electra
the third.
stuff. And
Yeah,
it shows how influential they were in that
yeah,
industry. They could do something different.
yeah.
Who would you say then was like, if you could take someone now currently working, other than Morrison, who's clearly still quite active, who's probably
Yeah.
active in the big two, who would you say still keeps up? Who's like American or international?
Yeah.
Who do you think still sort of like is waving the flag for like making comics a bit different?
There's, I mean, easy answers are like I'd say Jeff Johns is kind of one step ahead of a lot, at least with DC stuff. Like
Yeah.
he seems to be like I always worry because he'll captain stuff, and then he's just got other people on it, and it's like they can't keep up with the way he does stuff. He's like very good at taking small stuff and making them good, like Green Lantern. Because I'm a big Green Lantern fan as well. Like, his run was amazing. It's people like Scott Snyder. His Batman run is just like one of the best Batman runs. Like,
Yeah, and that's really got themes, and there was some real literary
Yeah.
sort of like talent in that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
Tom King as well.
Tom King.
Yeah,
He's a
he's
new
a
one.
mystery
He's
character.
like, really like all of his stuff so far has been like Vision was my favourite book last year.
Yeah, I read like called issues of that, and I'm going to get it in trade.
It's
It's one of those where
it's
again
so
I think
good.
like as
Yeah.
a single piece, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I think it is once you get to the end of his stories as well, they're even better. He's like, I think he's someone that will write some amazing stuff. But I suppose there's people that still like that don't do work often, but when they do, like people like Greg Rucka, like
Yeah. Well,
He's
his Wonder
kind of-
Woman has
yeah,
been really good in Rebirth.
yeah,
And I always like say he did Lazarus.
yeah,
And I've read a bit of that, and that's always really good.
yeah. Isn't Mark Wade?
Yeah.
He's
I
really
like his
good.
one.
But I mean, his stuff kind of ups and downs. It just depends what you read, I suppose.
Yeah.
But he's
I-
pretty.
I'd say.
He's pretty like.
Consistent.
Yeah.
Overall.
I suppose for me, the one I always go back to, and I think I say is Warren Ellis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Warren
yeah.
Ellis
Like
is
Warren
good.
Comes, I
Ellis.
say, comes out of nowhere every now and then, and you'll be like, "Oh, I wonder what he's doing."
Yeah,
and then he'll
it's-
blast something, and you'll be
Yeah,
like,
and you're like, oh yeah,
his Moon Knight made Moon Knight good again.
yeah. It made it like a thing again. And
Yeah. And
relevant.
I want to read his James Bond because he's writing a whole.
I've read the first volume and
Is
it
it-
was good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm really intrigued. Like, what's he going to do? With
He's
that?
only done 2 volumes. I think he's stopped now.
Yeah.
But I know he's a big Bond fan.
Yeah.
And,
So taking on a different universe and doing something, I'll be interested.
Yeah,
'cause
but I think
sort of-
he's just basically taken the Bond from the books.
Mm.
So he's a big fan of the books and tried to make it more like that. So it's kind of weird when you read it because you like. I mean, I've not seen all of the Bond films.
Yeah.
Even. Like, you've seen like maybe a quarter of them. So like, you kind of don't really know,
What
who's
the original
Bond, who's
character
and
is.
it's like you kind of learning as you go along. Like, oh right, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
But I think especially if you're into Bond, it's like spot on. I think.
I'll just give it. I
Um,
will. I do want to give it a
yeah.
go. I think one of those I'll definitely. Again, when it's in collect together, I'll probably collect that.
Yeah,
and get
but I
it.
suppose he's like Transmetropolitan's not far after.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true
yeah.
actually. I mean,
Yeah.
and also Planetary,
Yeah,
which I love. I love
Yeah,
Planetary.
yeah.
That's an amazing series.
Mark Miller.
yeah,
Yeah.
He's
Mark
another
Miller,
one that's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of still. I mean,
Still
he's a
rocking.
lot of film stuff he does now.
He's matured though.
yeah,
I find because again, him, Civil War is I think will stand up as a for me, is a good piece of Marvel work.
Especially because it's like one of the only Marvel stories that like events that really kind of like I would recommend.
It stands alone. But even like lately, he's done like is it Starlight? What was it? He did one. I read it. Like, but I can't remember what it's called now. About a guy sort of like who was a space adventurer and gets called back, and that was like really good fun.
Yeah, he does some really good. I mean, Superman Red Son.
Yes.
It's always on the list of like I always find it weird because it's like if you were to look up a list of like Superman books to read, that's up there, and I'm always kind of like, well, I wouldn't recommend it as a because it's one on its own, really, isn't it? Like it's an Elseworld story.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not really one to get you into Superman.
No, it's one of those like
it's like the opposite of Superman. While it's the same thing, but it's such a good like study on Superman as like as an ideal, and and like if he landed somewhere else,
like how it would pan out.
Yeah.
I like Comrade Batman in that as well. I think it's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
No, so there are people that have clearly come out of this. I mean, even like probably to a lesser extent, Brian Michael Bendis. His continued run on like Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Very very superhero, very very, but like really.
I mean, it's the only Ultimate line that
stands
leaked
out
into like current stuff.
There's
people like Jonathan Hickman's pretty
I was just
good.
thinking Jonathan Hickman.
Yeah.
He's got. I read the first couple of volumes of West of East.
Yeah,
East of West.
Yeah.
I read the first couple of volumes of that. And it's really good.
Yeah, I've read the first volume.
And again, that's one of those I think like. Because he's long form, like all that stuff he did with the Avengers as well, like leading up to Secret Wars and all that kind of thing. Like that's another one where like you read. I read because I came in for the event and I read Secret Wars and I was like, oh no, I've got to go read this now, and then I've got to go read that. But at no point was I like, oh, I've got to go read that. It was, oh no, I've got to go read that. And that's fascinating.
Nice to add it to.
It was, and it was all really interesting. So. I like that when they can do that.
Yeah. Rick Remender as well. He's pretty.
Remender's one of those I find I like a lot. I love his Secret Avengers, and I haven't really much don't create her own stuff.
Yeah,
I hated his Captain America run.
I
like his Z stuff. I don't know why it did not land with me.
I've because he does Black Science, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, I read the first volume.
I didn't get on with Black Science. I thought that was going to be up my street.
What's the? There's one he did, a detective one recently. Is it Noir or something like that? Oh, I can't remember. Well, that was really good. Whatever I'm thinking.
Yeah. Who wrote Southern Bastards?
That's Jason Aaron, I think.
Jason Aaron.
Yeah.
He's another one.
Yeah.
Like, his Thor one was really good. It's a comic thing.
Yeah.
But, like, I read the first volume of Southern Bastards, and like saying about doing something different.
Yeah.
In the comic, with comics.
Yeah.
That's totally different. Like that really took me by surprise.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? But then I got to the end of the volume. I was like, I think I'll probably be getting the rest of these. They're really good.
I think he's I've read a few of his Marvel stuff because he's doing like Doctor Strange and stuff.
Yeah, that was good. That started well.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of
bogged down.
Like at the moment, it's since they've kind of finished the first story arc off. It's not really going anywhere, but I'm enjoying. I don't know if it's the art though. Yeah. When you just like,
is it Brian Bucciardo who's doing that?
Yeah. I think not Brian. It's Bucciardo.
Yeah. It's one of them.
Yeah, one of those guys.
And we probably got his name completely wrong, but
sorry.
It's quite yeah. So there are people that like it makes you wonder like, if there hadn't been that British invasion or that
because these are people that take it seriously as well.
Yeah. Well, apparently, like just reading the book as well, there was an editor, Karen Berger. It was her that brought them all in.
Vertigo, isn't it?
Yeah, she created Vertigo.
Yeah.
But she brought them in.
Yeah.
And then it was her that created Vertigo and stuff. Yeah. So it was all off her back. She took the risk.
Yeah.
So I mean, she may have saved modern day comics. To be fair, because Marvel was in a state, DC was in a state. So
because there's more as well. There's like who's the guy that did Shade? Like Peter Milligan, is it?
Yes. Yeah. He came over like he was recommended. So in the book, like more recommended it. Yeah. And was like, oh, you should bring this.
Because there was like a second wave, wasn't there? Because that's when Mark Miller came in.
Yes.
I think basically 2000 AD had like amazing writers, and then Vertigo took them all.
Stripped it out.
They got a second wave of like not quite as good, but still really good writers. Yeah. And then they took them as well, and then like I think ever since then. It's just completely nosedived.
Oh yeah. Well, what's his name? It was Delanio as well, the guy who followed Moore on Captain Britain, and then was brought over to write Hellblazer. To write the first run of Hellblazer, not Hellraiser, Hellblazer, and he's great up. He's that second wave. Yeah. Like you say, I started reading 2000 AD in like late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And I've gone back and I read all the old stuff, and like you say, there's some fantastic stuff from the 80s.
Yeah.
And then you do get into the 90s, and there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
But you do sorely miss. Like, there's
Yeah.
no one from like the mid 90s onwards that's ever made it over to America.
It's,
like,
it's
into the big
strange,
leagues.
isn't it? Like, I don't know why it's. Maybe they just go straight over there.
Yeah.
The good ones.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few holdouts like Wagner, who obviously stuck around to do Judge Dredd,
Yeah.
and Pat Mills, who's sort of like is die-hard British, never going to do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anybody
Yeah, I think
that's come through.
there must be some reason behind that.
I'd love to do it the other way. I mean, I don't think you'll ever get the page right. I'd love to bring like Scott Snyder and go, right, Scott Snyder, go and do a Slane story.
Yeah.
Or bring back Morrison to do
That's
Nemesis, because that was awesome.
Because like we spoke to him at this event, like they did this thing where all the publishers come round and ask you like how are we doing, what can we do to make it better, and you just kind of like 2000 AD came round and you just like, I don't know what to say to you, man. Like it's just there's the only thing that I feel like they could do is that, like, bring in the talent and then people, because otherwise, like, especially for us, like I was saying earlier, with the young audience, like no one cares for 2000 AD. Sadly, like
it was my gateway.
Yeah,
it's what got me into comics.
Yeah, because it's available in newsagents.
Yes,
yeah.
It was seeing it on the stands.
Yeah,
like, and I picked it up.
Yeah, I think it's that they don't. A lot of it as well, like for me, it's never evolved in any way.
No,
it always looks like a grunge 80s book.
It really does.
And like
even the art still.
And that's what, and they've still got the same fans that they cater to, but eventually they're gonna die, and then 2000 AD will die with it. I think.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a real shame.
Yeah, it is. It is really.
It's that thing of like, I know they've got. Maybe they should do something like totally different, because each story's like 8 pages, isn't it? Like each anthology is 8 pages. And it's when you read like the Judge Dredd case files.
Yeah.
And you read like a single 8-page story. It's it's like a short story.
Yeah.
They usually are really satisfying.
Yeah.
Because you go, it was quite quick, and it was quite well
paced.
It was really interesting. When they do like a long saga, and I do love some of their long sagas, like Apocalypse War and Cursed Earth, some of the early stuff.
Yeah.
When you read the later stuff, and it's 8 pages, you're like, they have to repeat, because just in case you've picked up episode 6.
Yeah.
The first 3 panels or the first page is like, and here's your catch up.
Yeah.
But then you've got 7 pages.
Yeah.
And then you're doing it again and again.
Yeah.
You're just like, it just feels painful trying to get through some of that stuff now.
It's and it's not in colour, which is like, it's got.
Is it still like, some of it? I've seen
some stories they do,
but they still do a lot of black and white.
Yeah, and it's like hard, especially when you've got that kind of dark feel about it, because like there's and there's still a lot of white on the page, so
I don't know, Fleetway or Rebellion or whoever does it, I think they should really consider sort of breaking out and going, do you know what, we're going to do full-size comics, full 24 page, and we're going to do, because it was IDW did Dredd,
and we can sell that, but we can't sell 2000 AD.
Then they should partner up with IDW again, do a Nemesis book,
because they still do Dredd.
They did it. I collected the Road Trooper book, from a few years ago. That IDW did. That was really good.
Yeah,
they should really do more of that.
Yeah,
because I've got boxes and boxes of old 2000
but that's
AD,
I think, because
I'll flip through at times. Zenith, like Grant Morrison's Zenith. I mean, that's great stuff. You never get anything now where it's like Breakout and you go, I've got to read that. That's something to. Here's someone to watch.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, it's weird how something can go from. It's almost like it's just determined not to change, and I feel like a lot of it is because its audience would be so angry if they did, and like, because they're like, well, we'll please our audience. They're the ones that are killing it off. Like, and it's like these miserable old gits that kind of.
That's why they should do the
no
side.
offense to anyone,
but that's true. That's what it is.
That is what it is. Like.
So why not broaden your horizons? Do a wider story. Do something with IDW, because IDW or Boom or whoever clearly want to do it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and they're still doing Dredd now.
Yeah,
still doing different things.
So you've got Predator versus Judge Dredd versus Alien.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again, I'm going to wait for the trade for that. But that's great, and Dark Horse and IDW are doing that.
Yeah.
So why haven't we got like Road Trooper and stuff doing? There's so many characters in the. If we can do so much with the DC or Marvel mythology,
why not?
Jesus, the back catalogue of 2000 AD characters. They can
But that's it.
amazing.
You've got to sort of stretch out, and you've got to make it a bit varied, don't you? Because like once it reeks of the era, like, you know, it's only so long it can go. And like, luckily we are in 80s flash, like, you know, throwback at the minute, so it's probably got a little bit more length on it. But soon that's going to be gone, and then they're going to struggle.
You look at like the
Do
IDW.
you have 2000 AD here? Do you have it?
We used to stock it.
We stocked it for like a couple of months, and it was just like we had to put them on the tables to read. Like, just because it was like, I don't know what we're going to do with them. Because you can't bag and board them.
No, they're wrong shape.
They don't even fit in the box. Like,
No.
To sell us back issues, so it was just like, well, might as well just give them to people to read. Like, that's it. It's so, like, it's really sad. Like,
they could do so much with it.
I know. It's like the Dread stuff. Like they do. It looks newer.
Yeah.
Like, you just look at it and like the covers on they've done a series where he's got like, he's grey with beard and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like really colourful.
It looks
what's going on in these? It's weird. Like, it like, it's all right. It looks good. So they've obviously got the capability to make it look. I mean, even like, look at Dread. Like, it's got the same feel, but it doesn't look like an 80s film, does it? Like, it's still got that kind of.
Well, the thing is, it was called.
It
started in 1977. It's called 2000 AD.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? We're now in 2017.
Like,
that's it.
Like you said, it's not futurist anymore. It's past its day.
It is,
We've actually, like, it's has it had its day?
Yeah.
It's
Rebellion. If you're listening, probably not.
No.
Do something different. Give me more Nemesis.
That's
Give me more Rogue Trooper. Something else. I think there's so Slain. I'd love to do it like proper, like, give someone
I think people
Slain.
would like if it's like there's definitely a market there, because like when they did their 2000 issue, like it was popular. Like, we sold like 3 of them, which is
sounds
3 more than normal. Like,
that's
like, really,
sounds really popular.
Yeah, like one guy bought 2. But that was all I got in, because I was just, it wasn't.
I
only got it in because like, this guy ordered it, and I was like, well, I'll get a couple in just in case it is popular, because it's like, you know, it could be, and in the right place it will be. But they said it's the first issue they've ever done that's gone to second print.
Yeah, they need to do something.
Yeah,
so I hope they do.
It would be a shame for it to, because like, it must be a really nice jumping on point for people trying to get in and that, like,
as
being
kids,
in shorter
like,
form and stuff.
I know a couple of kids living near I. It's sold in the local newsagent. There's a couple of kids I know that get it.
Yeah.
So
it's got a possibility, but when you think, like, that's the first issue they've got that went to second print. Scooby-Doo Apocalypse issue 2 went to second print.
Yeah.
So, like,
what volumes are you selling nationally?
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, Scooby-Doo, they get international sales.
Yeah,
but even as a national comic,
but it's not like
it's
Scooby Apocalypse. It's not like it's.
Well, it's not like it's short of characters or even history. They've got so much they could do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Sod it. I'm going to quit tomorrow. I'm going to go work for Rebellion.
Yeah. There you go. Sort it out.
Right. I will wrap up there. We've got over an hour, so that's been fantastic, guys. Thanks very much.
Right.
No,
so do you want to try and just plug the shop one more time before we sign out?
Yeah, come down to Super Shakes Comic Book and Milkshake Shop. Burton-on-Trent. We're just on Station Street opposite the McDonald's.
Yeah.
And we are ready for any comic subscriptions or orders or whatever you feel like, or even if it's just information.
Yeah, just come and have a chat with us if you want.
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend it. I do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's how this came about, to be fair. So, thank you very much, guys.
Okay, and there we have it. A great conversation with the guys at Super Shakes. Great shop, and I do recommend, if you live in the area, or don't, to be fair, if you're passing, check them out. Great shop, and find them on Twitter at Super Shakes Shop, and just drop them a line. So this is sort of wrapping up the month, really. So this has been a great investigation, or a great look into the British invasion. I want to thank Greg Carpenter for his time for the interview. I want to thank the guys from Super Shakes for their time, and I want to thank you guys for listening. So please get in contact if you've got anything you want me to look into, or you want us to research, or you want to contribute in any way. please contact me. 20th Century Geek at gmail.com is my email address. At 20th Century Geek on Twitter. And I'm on Facebook. Facebook.com/20th Century Geek. Get in contact. Let me know what you think. If you're listening to us on iTunes, don't forget to subscribe or leave us a 5-star review. Anything you want to talk about. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot and have a great week.